live.
All right, so we will call this meeting to order at 5:44. Let the record note that Alderman Steuer is in substitute, I guess, for Alder Nicholson. Alder Burnett is present, and Alder Johnson. We call for the approval of the agenda.
Move to approve.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. On to the approval of the minutes.
Move to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Item D, number 1. Consideration with possible action on a request by Pete's Annex LLC to enter in an agreement for parking division to manage and enforce parking in the BMO Harris Bank Building parking lot located in the block surrounded by Broadway, West Walnut, Hubbard, and Pearl Streets, Lot BW, held over from the September 10th, 2018 Improvement and Services Committee meeting. Staff?
This was sent back to staff to continue negotiations with the owner of the lot. Staff has held some preliminary outreach relative to the terms and conditions that we talked about at our last meeting, and we are awaiting a response back from the property lot, or the parking lot owner. So we would recommend this be held for 2 weeks to allow us time to finish those negotiations. Talking with Operations Director Pirlot, at least on the initial outreach, they were open to the suggestion of the cost plus plan. So
Okay.
we're still in negotiations. We do not have an agreement ready for execution at this point.
Okay. Is there a motion to hold?
So move.
I will second that.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Item 2, consideration with possible action on request by Alder Weary to review how sidewalk replacements are funded, held over from the September 10th, 2018 Improvement and Services Committee. Alder Weary's not here. We looking to hold this again?
I would be fine with that. We've not had any conversations in regard to the item.
Okay.
Motion. Okay.
Second.
Motion to hold it.
Motion by Alder Steuer, seconded by Alder Brunette. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Item 3, consideration with possible action on request by Alder Dorf to consider adding to the 5-year capital improvement program the replacement of the water main on Humboldt Road that broke in February 2018 and caused thousands of dollars of damage to dwellings below the break. Alder Dorf?
So, I'm not asking that Improvement and Services make a decision on this. I really think that that is management's job, and our job is to govern, as alders. But what I wanted to do was to make sure that there's just consideration. There's a lot of talk about the water main and the damage and possible lawsuit against the city. And so if that water main indeed does need to be replaced, I would just like consideration given to it being looked at. And if it's possible, and I know actually that for the past 3 years, it's already been being considered. And if it rises to the level where it can go onto the 5-year plan, I'm hoping that that will be able to happen. I would be of concern if that water main leaked again this winter, if something happened this winter and those homes were flooded again. That would be a horrible situation for the city to be in. I would like the city to be seen as doing something about what happened. Whether it is DPW or perhaps it's water utility. I mean, it's somebody's project, and I'm not clear on whose project it would be. Could be either one or the other. So I'm just wanting to bring this up and I'm not even sure what action you can take on it other than referring it to the Department of Public Works to determine if this is something that could be put in the 5-year plan.
Director Grenier, could you give us an overview of, how a project like that would be taken on and maybe the condition of the roads and any opportunity that might exist to address that issue when we do some road reconstruction?
Sure. What staff does, historically, prior to about 3 or 4 years ago, the condition of the pavement drove resurfacing and reconstruction projects. So based primarily, almost solely on the condition of the pavement, We would select a candidate list of streets for the resurfacing program and for the reconstruct programs and bring those candidate lists forward. Once those lists were approved through INS and through the Common Council, then we would inform the the sewer section within DPW and the water utility of what streets we were doing and what years we were doing them. Those two entities would then also make plans to refurbish or rehabilitate their facilities as necessary to coincide with our plans. The reason for that is there wasn't a good cohesive way for overlaying those multiple layers on top of each other to come up with a holistic package on what a street looked like. With the fleshing out, with adding some robustness to the GIS system that the city currently uses, and the ability to share that data between DPW and the Green Bay Water Utility, we now are able to, we've got new, for those of you who've been around for a while, the streets are rated every 2 years, and there's a numerical ranking between 10, which being 10 is a brand new, never been driven on, beautiful road, and 1 is basically impassable. Those street PASER ratings are largely what drive our program. We came up with our own internal ranking system for sanitary sewer, storm sewer, and water utility has a ranking system for their facilities. And having all of that data in our GIS system in a dependable format, so our hiring of a GIS specialist has helped us get that data where we need it. We're now able to take a look at all of those systems, and it's completely changed how we prioritize our streets for inclusion in the program. So a lot of that water utility data is integrated into our plans, and I think you saw that with our resurfacing program with some of the streets that were selected for the 18 construction year coincided with large volume of lead service replacement, okay? So what we do is we try to prioritize the streets based on engineering need or infrastructure need. That will get a street project or a construction project into our capital improvement program. Now, just because a project doesn't fall into the capital program from a reconstruct or a resurfacing need, that does not preclude that project from going forward. There are a number of projects that we've completed over the last several years where the street, due to pavement infrastructure, sanitary sewer infrastructure, and water infrastructure, didn't rise to the level of being included as a resurfacing or reconstruct, but because of street ponding and low-lying area flooding conditions, the storm sewer had to be fixed, and we simply couldn't wait. The storm sewer could not wait for the pavement to catch up. We had to do something quicker. In those cases, the stormwater utility takes on the entire cost of that project. Because in a typical project, if we're doing a reconstruct or resurfacing, water utility pays for the water infrastructure, sanitary sewer pays for the sanitary infrastructure, storm pays for the storm infrastructure, and then the levy-supported general obligation bonding picks up the pavement cost. And those costs are then distributed out a little bit more. No one person, no one entity has to carry the load. Now, in some of the projects I was referring to, where the storm sewer simply couldn't wait, the storm utility then has to absorb a higher percentage, in this case, all of the cost involved in not only replacing their infrastructure, but they also have to replace the pavement on top of it. That opportunity does exist here. And water utility, I've spoken with Director Quirk on this, they have multiple reasons for wanting that infrastructure improved in the Humboldt Road area. Their primary reason is because there's an elevated storage tank up there to help regulate pressure in their Mount Mary zone, and they want to get rid of that tank, so they have to upsize the mains to make the system work properly. So they would like to upsize that water main and do an improvement project, and that will also address the age of the infrastructure, okay? Obviously, it's better for everybody if we can coordinate that effort into a reconstruct, and in this case, we would have to do a reconstruct. It's a concrete street, it's not eligible for resurfacing. In talking with Director Quirk, today. One of the things she is concerned with, obviously, is the cost, because being a concrete street, they're estimating that this could cost 3 times what the normal water main project would because of the cost of replacing all that concrete. So, and I did have a conversation with Alder Dorf today. We have been looking at Humboldt Road. This street is on our radar, okay? We're not exactly sure when that's coming. So we will continue to evaluate that street, compare it against other streets that are in need of reconstruction, and put it into the priority rankings, okay? So we have been doing that. We will continue to do that. And we will continue to work with water utility to find out if there's a need to accelerate that, and are there other methods that could accomplish that acceleration.
Do you know offhand is every street in the city of Green Bay currently ranked?
Yes.
Do you know what Humboldt is ranked at right now?
Offhand, I don't. What I can tell you is largely in response to citizen complaints out there, the primary problem we had was ride quality. There was a lot of tire slap at the joints because of joint deterioration, and it was rather bumpy to ride on. But overall, except for right at the pavement joints, the concrete pavement is in very good shape. There's a lot of structural integrity to that pavement. So that means there's a lot of life left in the road. But there were issues to noise, wheel slap, and discomfort, the bumps as you traveled, given how that road was constructed. So over the past several years, we put a lot of money. We've gone up there, and if you take a ride on the concrete portion of Humboldt Road, it's very easy to see because you'll see the black, okay? We've done a lot of joint sealing and a lot of patching of those joints to extend that pavement life. That's how we first started taking a look at Humboldt, figuring out where it falls within our program. So we've done a lot of maintenance programming up there to extend the life of the pavement.
So right now, if the water utility were to go in there and replace the water main, is the street reconstruction their responsibility?
We would not go with a full reconstruction. They would be
patch,
responsible to
repair.
replace the trench.
Okay.
Now, depending on where that water main falls and what the joint pattern is on the street, generally speaking, pretty good, given my knowledge of the area and how wide that street is, it's fairly safe to assume that there are 4 panels wide across that street. If the water main happens to fall directly in line with a panel, all you have to do is replace that panel. If it falls on the joint, you'd have to replace 2 panels, but we wouldn't replace curb to curb in that case.
Okay.
However, instead of it just being an asphaltic trench, which might only be 4 feet wide, in order to replace that water main, you might be looking at a 15-foot wide concrete panel that's 8 inches thick. So, I mean, it's pretty easy to follow the logic that it gets expensive. It's more than just a water main.
And is it the water utility's responsibility to determine which water mains are replaced on an annual basis?
Yes, we don't have any authority over them, over their program, because quite honestly, we don't work in their world. They know their water main.
Okay. Alder Steuer?
Well, there's a bunch of things. I think one of the things, the questions I have, and it might not relate completely to this, but the fact, when we had these water issues, the storms as of late. I know we need to concentrate on Humboldt Road here, but, I always wonder about who's responsible. If there's, I had a particular home where there was a water main, there might have been a gas line break. She needed her terrace fixed, and it was DPW, it was the water department, it was gas. And I think a lot of citizens just want to know, they don't care how it's fixed as long as it's fixed. And I guess what I'm trying to drive at is looking at the entire city. I know we have a 1 to 10 rating for roads. And I've heard through the grapevine that some roads were taken off of the list this year. It would really be nice for all of us, all the alders, to have something, and I know that the information's there, but something in hand to say, okay, this is what we're doing this year, and what areas have been done, have been fixed, if you will. But as far as what, Alder Dorf is talking about, I have no problem with that. I would really like to see something proactive ahead of time. I realize that when you do a reconstruct or something on a road, that you're only doing a small portion, but it seems to me like there's gotta be a better way. And I don't know what that might be, but I'm leaning toward what you brought up, as far as that we need to do something.
Alder Burnett, any questions? I mean, it seems to me that since this committee doesn't have jurisdiction over water main replacement, and that's the source of the concern, it seems to me that perhaps this should be referred to the water utility.
Well, actually, like I said, in the conversations that I had with Alder Dorf today, we're very comfortable with having this referred to staff for consideration for inclusion in the program.
Okay.
We're already doing it, so it's an action that I think is very appropriate. We continue to do this each and every year when we're pulling our program together, and knowing that there are some concerns up there, that gives us the opportunity to also continue those conversations with water utility to find out what their plans are. So sending it to staff for consideration, I think is very appropriate.
Alder Dorf, you're comfortable with that?
Very.
I would entertain a motion to that end.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Alder Steuer, seconded by Alder Burnett. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Item number 4, consideration with possible action on request by Alder Johnson to identify top areas of concern within the city that experience frequent and/or severe flooding and report Department of Public Works plan to rectify such concerns with short and long-term solutions. So I submitted this communication. I think obviously we've had a number of rainstorms this summer that were certainly significant storms, but I've also observed a number of streets that frequently flood from normal storms. And so I would just love to hear maybe some input from city staff on, again, what are the areas within our city that are of concern, and what our plan is, or what is our strategy to help bring some relief to some of the residents and business owners in these areas.
Sure. This actually came up 2 to 3 years ago, and staff prepared a report that identified some of those top locations and what the concerns were that were contributing to those high water conditions. From that report, we prioritized the areas and came up with some plans on how to address those, and some of those implementation steps have already been taken. As a matter of fact, for the entire summer, Elizabeth Street over on the east side of the city, north of the Riverside Ballroom, has been under construction in District 5. That is one of the projects that came out of the study 2 to 3 years ago. So I guess my recommendation would be, I have staff working on pulling the old report, updating that to current conditions, and being able to tell you what projects we have already completed and what our plan is continuing to move forward. Because we didn't just develop the report 3 years ago. That report is our guidepost that we are currently using for implementation. In particular, one of the projects that was identified was we have a number of what we call sub-basins. So it's a local area within the city that drains to a low spot, if you want to think of it that way, okay? So we have all of these sub-basins marked out. There are limits to them on our mapping. And basins 108 and 106, or is it 108 and 110? 110 and 108 are both in District 9. The discharge for both of those basins is the slip at Shipyard, and they radiate to the northwest and west from there. One of the basins actually includes the old slough area that goes up as far as Dousman Street near West High. We identified Basin 108 a few years ago as being of critical nature because that area continues to experience localized ponding during rain events. And when we got into what we found was needed over there was the existing storm lift station was undersized. So we needed to upsize the lift station for that, serving that basin. We got into the design of the lift station and found out that what we were doing actually wasn't going to correct the problem to the degree we needed. And what we need to do is we need to tie basins 108 and 110 together and build a single station to serve both of those basins. So that design effort is underway right now with the hopes of implementing and putting that lift station in 2019. And as a matter of fact, there's $900,000 set aside that came out of the stadium district tax money that's targeted directly towards that. So again, coming out of the report that we generated a couple of years ago, there are a number of action steps that we have completed, there are a number of action steps that are currently under development, and then we will continue to move on into those other areas as time goes by. So we'd just like the opportunity to continue, or to finish off the update on that report and bring that back to you in a more comprehensive fashion.
Would you be able to do that in 30 days?
Absolutely.
Okay.
The biggest thing we're dealing with right now is trying to get you folks a budget.
So when I appreciate that comment. When I am curious, and I'd like to maybe just broaden this discussion topic a little bit. When we start looking at the need for, resurfacing and reconstruction and obviously, everything that falls within your department. It seems to me that infrastructure seems to be the thing that most people are saying we need to make more investment in. At least I haven't seen something, maybe former alders have, but is there a 10-year, a 20-year, strategy, a funding model that says, look, this is how much we're going to need to bring our infrastructure up to the level that it needs to be at?
No, there is not.
Okay.
No, I would like to see something on that order.
Is it a common thing that public works departments do?
Yes,
Do you do that internally, or do you require outside services to handle that?
it's something that needs to be done internally. There simply aren't, external staff is not going to have the knowledge of our infrastructure and to be able to do that. What I can tell you is we're faced with making a choice. And that choice is doing studies and planning or doing engineering and putting projects out the door.
Well, I don't doubt, I don't doubt that you guys are being good stewards with the money that we're given, but I'm looking at this saying, with the scope of issues and challenges that have been discussed, and we just passed a wheel tax that's $2 million a year, and at least from everything that I can tell, $2 million a year isn't even scratching the surface of our need. And if we're just trying to address this problem on an annual basis, we're never going to get to a long-term solution. And so I think at some point, we're going to have to pump the brakes. And that's why, I'm asking the question of, and I appreciate your point that nobody understands our outside, nobody from the outside understands our internal infrastructure, but I would imagine there's consultants out there that this is what they do. They come in and they take the data that you provide and they say, look, if you want to bring your infrastructure up to speed over 10, 20 years, this is the kind of funding you're going to have to provide to do it. Because right now, I feel blind as an alder. I feel blind as a city councilman when I'm trying to, we've got budget season coming up, and I have zero idea about how much money that you need to effectively perform the job that our residents expect. And again, I don't know what that magic number is, if that's a 5-year plan, a 10-year plan, a 20-year plan. But I think at some point, we've got to take a step back and say, planning's important. And so, I don't know what the other alders and how you feel in this issue, but.
We are currently at that point. We have staff that are dedicated to putting together a 5-year program, which we have not had for several years. I think a 10-year program, my honest opinion of that, my personal and professional opinion, a 10-year program is a feel-good thing. 5 years is about as far out as you can accurately forecast anything. And even at a 5-year level, that plan is so subject to change but 5-year is a good planning period for infrastructure anyway. So we do have staff that are dedicated to working on that 5-year program and getting back into the swing of that so that you folks do have some sort of an idea of what's going on.
So is that the 5-year plan that we discussed at this committee that tied into the wheel tax and the 5-year
Absolutely.
plan?
Yep.
I just, I think we use the term 5-year reconstruction plan, but what I'm unfamiliar with, again, is the 5-year reconstruction plan. Are we just talking repaving plan there?
No, our 5-year plan Each year, we bring forward an annual capital improvement program, and that capital program addresses all the work that our department is going to be taking on from a public works perspective, okay? It does not address the work that we're doing on behalf of other departments like the Parks Department, Fire Department, okay? But it does address our program. So it is a comprehensive program that addresses pavement projects, subdivisions, sewer contracts, stormwater management contracts, storm sewer projects. So all of that is in there. And the 5-year doesn't have as much detail, but it does target specific streets, and we give the accuracy of the cost estimates is less in the 5-year program than it is in the annual program, because we're trying to estimate what costs are going to be in the future. So there is some variability out there. But what we are trying to do, and one of the things that we've struggled with the 5-year program, is we put the 5-year program together, and there's significant staff effort that goes into doing that. And remember, if the staff is busy doing that program, they're not available to do design work on infrastructure projects to actually do something, okay? And we were putting a lot of effort into that 5-year program to do the planning for it. And in year 2, the entire program was thrown out the window because streets were being pulled out and this was changing and that was changing. It was a lot of wasted effort. Now, we've got the wheel tax, so we have a little bit more dependability, not so much with the funding, but a lot of the problems we had with getting projects to go forward was folks would come in and they didn't want to pay the assessment, so the program would be altered. Now that that assessment portion is gone, there's less of a reason for folks to object to the project going forward, so we feel there's going to be a lot more stability with that 5-year program moving forward than there had been previously, so it makes a lot of sense. And again, we do have staff tasked with doing that. That is largely a winter, if you will, task.
So when you say that if we're pulling staff away to work on a plan, we don't have staff to engineer,
Same people who are going to pull together those lists of candidate streets and develop the cost estimates are the same, that's the same design staff.
so you're saying if, and I just want to understand, so if we're working on a 5-year plan, does that mean we don't have the staff to properly engineer roads and actually make improvements?
They're doing one or the other.
So at what point do we say, you know what, we're going to outsource this? Whether it's outsourcing the plan or outsourcing the engineering? I mean, how do we bring you the temporary relief that you need so that we can get the results that the residents of our city expect?
That's all going to come down to funding.
And I guess that's where my concern is, if we're not making that request, if we're not having that discussion, I mean, is that something that you're, I mean, what is the timeframe? When are you expecting to have the 5-year plan complete?
Ideally, I think we'd like to have something by the end of the calendar year, bring it forward in January.
That's a start. I mean, you're right about the fact that 10 years is a little farther out. And I've seen plans for not just Public Works, but other departments where, you know, a plan is a plan. You know, you can do some good things with it, but there's always changes. I think one of the issues I have is that when we have these incidents, you know, these rain incidents, and a lot of it's nature, you can't help when you have a flash flood. You know, you guys are out there trying to figure out, okay, do we need something on this lift station? What's going on with this area over here? I mean, you know, it's reactive rather than proactive. So I think what Alder Johnson's trying to say too is that we need to get ahead of it somehow, and whatever that takes. I know over the years we've talked about budgets and that, and a lot of times it comes down to, well, we don't have the people for this, if they're either doing this job or that job. And I think, you know, it's no reflection that we feel about the department, but we just feel like we want to get results somehow. We get calls from citizens all the time, and we listen to them. And so, with that being said, we just need some direction that way. And I think we'd be more willing to say, look, you know what, if we got to raise taxes a little bit or do something in order to do this, I think most citizens would look at that and say, well, pay me now or pay me later. So I think it's very important that we keep going with that. I think the 5-year plan would be a good route to go, you know, that you're doing already. But, you know, we need you know, the people are talking. And like I said, it was unfortunate we had those 2 rain incidents, but, you know, I don't know how we get ahead of the game there. You know, I know it's an older city, we got infrastructure that needs work. You've got pockets that, okay, we can fix this area here, but we can't do this area here. And, you know, I was in the mapping for many years. I think the fact that we have the GIS, I think that's very, very important. I love that type of thing. But we as alders need to see in our districts what areas are in need of work. We need to see this stuff, and I know the information's out there, but we need to see it ourselves so that we can make wiser decisions. So that's all I have right now.
If I get back to the agenda item, there are things that we could do to help in the prevention of the flooding. And I know your department Facebook page and public education, things like making sure inlets are clear before, you know, rain, storms the best we can. And my area, some constituents have complaints about people putting debris in road, whether it be weeds and leaves and things like that, that when the rain comes, it blocks. And so to get back to the agenda item, there are a lot of things that we could do to help with the flooding, and realize that many of these floods are once every 5 years or 10, you know, but some of our aging parts of the city experience a lot more flooding. In my old district, area around West High School, flood quite a bit. So how many culverts do we have in the city? That's an area of concern for my district alone.
Culverts are pretty rare. That's
Pretty rare now, right?
That's only in the areas where we do not have storm sewers.
Sure. Yeah, and so Hillcrest would be one of them, and I mentioned both you gentlemen about that constituent. He's very relentless on digging out that culvert because he believes that the debris has settled there for years. And I get it. Hillcrest, we would have done that if the project passed, but it didn't for obvious reasons. So, you know, things like that, if the public knows that we're thinking of those sorts of things before the big rain comes, because of that situation along Hillcrest, he's had flooding, he's had water in that culvert for years, he said, standing water. And now with this latest rainfall, he's had flooding in all 4 walls of his basement, where in the past would only be 3. So those are the sorts, and you're not blind to this, you get these calls too, I'm sure, but as alders, we get these calls all the time. So if we can say that we are working on it in some way to, until we get to that long-term plan that we're suggesting, to know that there are steps being taken, whether it be putting lift stations, repair or retention ponds, things like that. I don't know the best way to go about it other than putting a plan in place.
Yeah, and I think, to your point, Alder Burnett, I mean, that's been my area of concern. I mean, I've got residents on Antoinette Street who obviously experienced severe flooding, but, you know, they're telling me, look, this happens multiple times every single year. I've got the area behind Seymour Park there. I think it's on Maple Street. I stumbled across that earlier this year from a rather light rainfall, and the street is flooded and up to people's homes. And Mason in Maine is another area where I've seen severe flooding frequently. And it's just, I mean, a city of our size and our resources, I mean, we can't continue to stand by and watch these areas year over year over year be problematic for us and not do something proactive to address it. And if it's you know, we need more funding, we got to have that conversation. If, you know, and that's to me the importance of that 5-year plan, is it's not just to look at roads, it's here's all of our infrastructure needs. So as the city council is debating the budget this year, I mean, any smart organization that's doing their budgeting is also looking at what their needs are 5 years down the road and saying, you know, we got to start doing this. And so, and that's ultimately all that I'm asking for. And it sounds like you're working on that right now. You expect maybe some delivery on that in January. So unless there's any other discussions, I'd be comfortable with just receiving this and placing it on file, knowing that report is coming.
And just another point on that, you know, one of the things that we tried to get across in some of the media outreach that we did in following the storms, some of this is like peeling an onion. Okay, so every time you peel it, another layer appears. So not everything is a straightforward approach. there are some areas within the city where there's only so much we can do, okay? And some of the areas that you referenced are gonna fall into that. And we did I was talking with somebody recently, and I showed them in the conference room immediately adjacent to my office, we have a plat map in there from 1882. And a lot of folks think that it's a really neat wall decoration. Not for us. That's a living document. That's a legally recorded plat from 1882, and we use that document every day. And if you go and look at that, the area that starts off where Shipyard is and the slip, you can see a slough that runs all the way up to Dousman Street. Okay, the areas that experience street ponding in relatively light to moderate rainfalls, all that happened was back in the 1800s and early 1900s, the slough was filled in to make unusable land usable, which is great. But if you fill the low area, if you fill the ditch in, and you don't modify all the surrounding area that drains to it, when a rainfall comes, all that water keeps going to where that ditch used to be. And if there's no ditch there anymore, it simply fills up the street and people's yards, because Mother Nature, you didn't change the big picture. Now take that localized 10 acres and go up 5,000 feet in elevation to where you can see 200 acres, and the same thing is happening in multiple sub-basins that form a larger basin. So in a lot of these areas, we may have, okay, one of the problems they had during Hurricane Katrina was they found a lot of New Orleans is built below sea level. Well, as long as the dike holds, it was great. And the dike didn't have to fail. All that needed to happen was power needed to fail. And the minute the power failed, the lift stations didn't work and the water came in. Okay, if you're built below what the static water level is, I don't care how much money you throw at it, and I don't care what kind of engineering you do, eventually nature will win out. So some of it we can fix, some of it we can alleviate to the extent that we can, and there's just some of it we're simply not going to be able to accommodate.
Yeah, you know, I'm familiar with the history, and I've seen the map, and I
Yeah.
drew maps for years, so I understand the whole story. And some of these roads are, you know, the way the city developed, it's tighter area. I know that when that happens, you know, I think the frustration that we feel, you know, and part of my district is in that area as well. When you mentioned Antoinette Street, my daughter lost her car on Antoinette Street. You may have heard that, and she was trapped in her car and screaming and yelling, and we got her out, but thankfully the insurance covered it. But all I'm trying to say is that, especially when you're driving in those areas during these floods, I went down to get her, and I had to make about 6 or 7 different routes. Water here, I went around, and I kind of damaged our car as well. All I'm trying to say is that I understand the history of Green Bay. It's a low-lying city. It's on a river. We've altered our wetlands. We've done a number of things over the years. The sponge is not there as much. But with that being said, you know, I think we all understand that, but we still have to try to figure out a way, as much as possible with what we have, with what infrastructure we have, we still have to try to understand a way to try to deal with it. So if a 5-year plan, you know, a solid 5-year plan is the way to go, I'm all for that. But we really need to look at ways of ameliorating this a bit.
And again, that's what we're doing. We just want to make sure that if there was a magic bullet out there, we'd have found it already, okay? It's literally going to be, in some areas, we're going to be able to make significant progress with a reasonable investment of time, energy, and money. In some areas, it's going to be a challenge. There are limits to what we can do. And that, I mean, it's unfortunate, but there are some areas where there's only so much.
Is there a map that shows that? I would like to
There is
see
not,
these,
no.
or a basin or something that we can at least look at. I mean, I understand the
Well, and-
older part of the city, but if there's something out there that says, okay, when you have 1, 2, 3 inches of rain, generally what's gonna happen? What physical areas are gonna be affected?
Again, I think that's the report that Alder Johnson requested that we are it's the report we developed a couple of years ago that we are updating to show where those basins that most routinely, and we're not talking about these storm events like we've had over the past month. We're talking about our garden variety 2-year, 10-year storms that we still get street ponding, okay?
And you have records of that, correct?
Absolutely,
I
that's
would-
the
that's the
report.
kind of stuff I think
That's
we'd
the
wanna
report
see.
we delivered
Yeah.
a couple of years ago that we are updating, not only to show where those basins are, but what steps we have already taken and what steps we have in our plans moving forward to
Yeah.
continue to work on that.
And if I could just make one request, in that report, if you've got areas where you suggested that we're stuck between a rock and a hard place, and there's not much that we can do, I would still like to see that problem listed in that report, and I'd like that to be pointed out.
Oh, they are, and like I said, that the area, the sub-basin 108, 110 is one of those areas. That's one of those low-lying areas where we filled the ditch in, but didn't adjust anything around it, so the water's gonna continue to go down there. That's why we say the lift station, or lift stations in that area are undersized. They simply can't handle the flow, so what we're doing there is we are planning on a larger, high-capacity lift station. And that's great. That's beautiful, okay? That addresses the need. Except if we get hit with a storm and Wisconsin Public Service loses power. If that lift station goes down because there's no power there, there's only so much we can do. I mean, I can't protect against every eventuality.
What a lift station, oh, I'm sorry. I'll just-
Burnett?
Go ahead.
The one thing that
Sorry.
I want to say in benefit of the committee and the council, as we discuss this long-term plan and trying to figure it out, one thing that's critical and pivotal for land west of Taylor's, that we have some sort of agreement or service agreement in place with the Oneida Tribe, because a lot of the challenges that I've faced is the uncertainty of constituents on who has the authority to do certain work in what's considered the right of way. And I know you've been involved in these emails and conversations with our city attorney. One gentleman, that's his big concern, is that as debris and things are placed in the street, whose responsibility is that on properties that abut to the debris that abuts to tribal exempt properties. And the other thing too, from a development standpoint, Oneida has quite a bit of land that at any time they could choose to develop, and they're very good stewards of the land, so I don't have any question that they wouldn't do what's in the best interest of the area in terms of water and flow and whatnot. But we gotta have these conversations with other entities, in this case, the Oneida Tribe. So that's something to consider as well, because when land is out of our jurisdiction, anything could technically go there, you know, if it's within the complete jurisdiction of the Oneida Tribe. So something to think about as we continue these discussions.
Well, there are a number of other jurisdictions that we do interact with on a regular basis. Brown County has their facilities. We have we share borders with Howard, with Ashwaubenon, with Alloway, with Bellevue. And we work with their staffs on a regular basis, so point well taken, and yes, we will continue those, and for us, negotiation happens at your level.
Oh, yeah. Yes, man, I know.
Conversation happens at ours.
Right.
Okay, so if we're planning, if we're looking at issues where there are multiple jurisdictions, we are having those conversations. Out where Operations Director Pierlot lives, near Red Smith, we've got County Trunk A out there. We've had issues with, in Alder Dorf's district, where some of the ditching along County Trunk A has become overgrown or isn't being managed properly. And that's ponding some water up and causing, actually on the high side of County Trunk A, we were getting some flooding issues a couple of years ago. So we sat down and we met with Brown County Highway Department and said, hey, we're getting some complaints over here. This is what we're seeing. What can we do? And Brown County went out there and they actually did some repaving a couple of years ago, and they did some ditch work, and You know, so we agree, those conversations with other jurisdictions are critical because it gets the work done, it gets the right entity doing the work.
Any other discussion?
I guess the only question I had, we were talking about lift stations, and if you had something in your report or something that you could share with us as far as costs of, the various types of lift stations that there are out there and what that would take for us to incorporate that, that'd be nice as well. So I don't know if that's easy.
I can
enough.
try to estimate something, but I'll be,
They're all different.
yeah,
They're all
they're
different.
individually designed, so there really isn't a good rule of thumb
Yeah.
for it. I guess what I would suggest, instead of a receive and place on file, if you wanted to refer it to staff, and when we have the report prepared, we'd be happy to bring the report back. A refer to staff that's the end of it. And I don't think that's what we want. I think we want to have this
No, no,
conversation.
report.
You mean if we place and hold and file, it ends it, refer to staff, it keeps it alive?
Yeah, if you receive and place on file, that's kind of the end of
Right.
it. If you
Yeah.
refer to staff to prepare the
Right.
report, then we can bring the report back to you.
Okay. Gentlemen?
I'll make a motion to that effect.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to item number 5, report on Wisconsin Act 317 regarding changes in how the city must contact the property owners with tall grass weed violations.
This, I am going to bring Chris Pirlot, the operations director, in, so he can give you an update on some legislation that has been passed at the state level that directly affects us.
In your pack, you should have had a shortish report, 2 pages, just a summary report of what Wisconsin Act 310, how it affected us in public works. Basically, it changed some text in state statute 66, subsection 0628. It says that the new law that was passed in April of this year says that for noxious weed issues, electronic waste issues, and other building or property maintenance standards. So that could mean our inspection division type activities also. If a property is not owner occupied, you cannot charge them for services rendered unless you notify the owner of record first. Now that affects, just speaking on DPW stuff, e-waste, electronic waste, we don't see a lot of that at the curb. Grass weed issues, we deal with that every day during the growing season. So, so I'll talk mostly about grass weed, how it affects our process. Every single, it could be a single family residence. DPW does not know if it's owner occupied unless we do research. Now we have to do research. Up until, since 2010, July 2010, we put a tag on the door. It didn't matter if it was a single family occupied, single family unoccupied, multi-family, whatever. You got grass over 9 inches, you got noxious weeds, hang it on the door, and it gives them 24 hours to cut their grass, and if we come back in a day, if it's not cut, we take care of it, we can send the invoice bill for services. We can't do that anymore. We have, someone calls where there's, let's just say, single-family residence. Grass 10, 12 inches tall and weeds are all over the place. And we go out and say, yep, it sure is. It doesn't comply with our city ordinance. We have to do something. Okay, now we have to go back to the office, check the land records, find out if the owner is occupying that residence. If they are, we can hang the tag on the door just like we always did. If not, we have to find the owner. First class mail, other certified mail service, or electronic mail. Well, we don't know people's email addresses. So basically, we gotta go back to our snail mail, US Postal Service, and give them fair warning. And Mark, you probably remember this, back in the day before we did it the way we do now, it could be 2 weeks before we had potential action and a proper notification by the property owner of record before we, DPW, could do anything. In the meantime, we're getting beaten up, the city's getting beaten up, how come you're not doing anything about it? So all I'm saying right now is I'm just letting the, INS and council, just reminding them that this has changed the way we can do business in DPW. So unless it's changed again or modified, we're stuck. It's a rock and a hard place.
When was this instituted?
Act 317 was passed to law on April 18th of 2018.
So another,
So it's brand
another
new.
piece of the state coming at us.
Yeah.
Like I said, locally, I feel that we're losing some control.
And I'm guessing, our speculation at the staff level is that came from, say, multifamily owners, property owners who, because DPW and other cities did that, you put the hang tag on the front door of an apartment building, the grass is growing wild. A day later, we go back and we cut it, and then we invoice them and say, well, you didn't give us fair notice. So they probably went to legislators and they modified the text in chapter 66.
We used to have a notification period where we sent the letter.
Yeah.
And one of the problems we ran into was where do we send the letter and guaranteeing that the property owner got the letter and had adequate time for remedy. So we took a policy change forward to Improvement Service Committee, which was adopted by the common council, to go strictly with the 24-hour hang tag. And if the property was vacant, we didn't even issue the hang tag.
When the state passes legislation like this, do they consult with local bodies at all to understand the impact of what they're doing?
Sometimes yes, sometimes no.
It just seems to me in this situation, of course, I'm trying to be impartial about it, but it seems to me like what we did is we put the burden on the local body to take care of an issue that a landlord should be taking care of with their tenant.
Correct. And a lot of times it winds up being vacant parcels as well.
Right.
And the unfortunate event, in addition to extending out that timeline for compliance again, which is unsightly, it contributes to vectors, all the reasons why we changed it in the first place. Now with the requirement that we notify by mail, it seems like it may not be as big a deal, but it is. Simply the cost of letterhead, envelopes, and postage, and staff time to
Extra
do
trips.
these letters is gonna add up real quick.
Do we have any idea how much time this might add to city staff?
At this point, we don't, but what we can do is try to monitor that and get a feel for it going forward. There's simply no way for us to estimate it at this
It's all
point in time
different.
because we don't have a good feel for how many of the properties are owner occupied versus non-owner occupied, because at this point, up until this law came in, it didn't matter to us. We would go put the hang tag on the door 24 hours later. If it wasn't cut, we had all the right in the world to go out there and
It
cut.
sounds to me even with the law, it's not gonna matter because you still have to take the time to look it up, right?
Right, now, well, we'll have to look it up, but the minute we look it up and, if we receive an email complaint or phone complaint or what have you, saying, the property at 341 Charity Lane has excessively long grass, where I live. And somebody over in Operations Division goes on the land records and just types in 341 Charity Lane. The owner pops up and it says Steve Grenier, owner's address, 341 Charity Lane. Okay, that's 20 seconds to do that. To match the property address to the owner's address of record. The minute you get that correlation, that's owner occupied. Hang the tag and let's go. So it's gonna add some time. We don't know if that's going to be appreciable or not.
But it's the rental properties that are gonna be, they're
Right.
gonna extend the service period.
And that's where I
Our
have-
biggest disappointment or sadness, or whatever you want to call it, in the operations division, the frontline people who are enforcing this is for those owner non-occupied. Because whereas we could just go and take care of it, take care of the issue, and if the owner wanted to argue, we'd argue after the fact. Cut it now, we'll worry about billing issues or your complaints later, but let's get it cut. Now we have to wait up ahead for them to get notified, have the opportunity to do it themselves before we can go in and do anything. So now the argument or potential conflict is up front instead of behind us.
Well, most of my issues are rental properties, and, you know, you'll go up there and you find the owner lives in Nevada or Montana or what have you. I don't know, that's frustrating, to say the least, and I can understand your frustration as well. So I mean, with our GIS system, I would think that it's fairly seamless, like you said, Steve, you can match up the owner to the property. But, you know, it would seem like it would go fairly quickly to find out, you know, is it an owner occupied or is it a rental property? You know, the GIS will tell you what the land use is, the zoning, you know, all sorts of things. And isn't everything built into the system that you can look at that quickly and get that answer?
That's not the real issue for us.
Well, maybe not.
It's
I mean, you
dealing
can
with
get
the
that
rental.
information. The issue is now we don't have the control.
Is the real issue here.
And quickly being a relative term, when you're talking,
Quickly, yeah.
well, about the volume of calls that we get on this, I mean, a million here, a million there, pretty soon you're talking real money, you know?
Can we
Um,
still tag the properties? Like, can we still tag them,
we
but
can't
with
tag
different
it if it's not-
verbiage?
We can only tag it if it's owner occupied.
Right, but to still put
My-
a tag
my
out that says this
interpretation-
could happen, take care of it. And my point is maybe we can get some self-compliance before we have to wait 2 weeks before we can go out and take care of
My
it.
interpretation is, and we had talked to legal briefly, we can tag it, we still can't do anything
Yeah,
until they've been
But
officially.
at least put it in their mind.
But
No, I-
the tag
yeah, put 'em on-
might
I
incent them
think
to do
that's
it.
exactly what Alder Johnson's
Yeah.
getting at, is if we continue the tagging, even for non-owner occupied, maybe we get some voluntary complaints from the tenant, but we can't, and we could turn around and cut it in 24 hours like we normally do, we can't recover that cost.
Yeah.
We can't charge them. But if we tag them and then send the letter and the tenant takes care of it, or the letter gets to the resident and, or the owner happens to drive by and see the tag, what have you, you know, not to
Or
suspend
the resident will
tagging, I
call.
guess is what we're getting at.
Yeah, just use a little bit different verbiage maybe on rental units to try to get people to take care of it.
So
Because
there-
that's my biggest concern, is that we're sitting then 2 weeks,
Yeah,
the property continues to remain unkempt, and that's probably one of the bigger complaints that I oftentimes get
Yep.
in my area. And to be helpless, if you will, to resolve that issue for several weeks on end, if there's something that we can still do at the local level, again, to usher that along, it'd be,
Is there any legal issue with that? I mean, as far as?
No, we can't.
It's a friendly reminder, but I'm just.
Correct.
Any kind of pushback from citizens.
And again, we could go out there and cut it within that same 24-hour time period. We simply we can't charge them.
Because they haven't been given an
Okay.
So that's
opportunity.
just
they haven't been
incorporated.
So we'd
served
incur
officially.
that.
You incur that.
We incur that cost.
That adds.
So
up.
there's a couple of reasons for bringing this forward. Number one, we want to make you aware of what's going on. Number two, if we have some properties that are hanging around with long grass longer than they have been, it may be due to a non-owner occupied situation, and we want you to understand why that's happening. Lastly, one of the things that's extremely important with this legislation that Chris brings out in the narrative, this does not apply to snow and ice.
Right, so we can
So
still deal with that, because that's a
with
safety
winter
issue.
conditions, because of the safety, we do not have to change our process for snow and ice. We can just simply go out and take care of the issue like we
Yeah, for us,
have
it
been.
would-
We do not have to go through this mail.
so
For
long
DPW,
grass that's creating
Grass weeds, and then
habitats for
if someone,
rats.
say, puts
Right.
trees out to
Safety
the
issue.
curb.
So we're
I
not gonna
understand.
are we gonna get those notices anymore then? You know, the sheets that we get on lawn grass and all that, or some of the,
Oh, we won't change any of that.
you'll still get that. But, so basically, you're gonna have to change this, it'll have to be changed at the state level.
Correct.
It seems to me that there was some lobbying going on, like
Yeah.
either by multifamily owners or
We would presume.
presume.
Okay, so what does staff need us to do on this one? Receive and place on file?
Receive and place on file. We just want you to be aware of what's going on.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 6, consideration with possible action on request by the purchasing manager on the award of a contract to furnish and install concrete bases and conduit for light poles at Whitney Park.
So included in your packet, we have provided the report of the purchasing manager. And we have something to hand out.
I think she may have additional copies of the map.
Because the quotes were due today.
We just have
Or
TBD.
they were due earlier in the week.
Tuesday, October, I don't know if you can bring it back up.
Okay,
Something like it?
looks like we don't have the update in here. The quotes were received by purchasing.
And it's just one quote, single quote.
Is this time sensitive at all?
Yes, very.
Okay.
Well, the action is the committee action or the council action?
Well, if we hang on just a second, Rick.
Why are you messing running from here to shop first? This is on you.
Yeah, maybe.
It's just, I've got
That's frustrating.
And rats.
This is the one, right, Elmstar?
Yep.
That's frustrating.
I just don't know if, do you do a resolution at the city level and say, keep your act together?
Okay.
We can do that.
We can give it to you verbally. We only received one quote. The quote was from Elmstar Electric in the amount of $30,900 even. The recommendation from the purchasing agent is to award to the low responsive vendor, Elmstar Electric, in the amount of $30,900.
That's the only one?
We only received one quote,
One quote.
yes.
Make a motion to approve the bid to Elmstar Electric for $30,900.
I'll second.
Motion by Alder Burnett, second by Alder Steuer. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 7.
Hold on a second, please. Go.
Do I need to read this whole thing? I'll get reading. Report of action taken by Department of Public Works. 7A, award of contracts. Item number 1, to approve the award contract Bridge 2-18 Nitschke Catwalk repairs to the low responsive bidder, Lunda Construction, in the amount of $29,310. Do we take these one at a time?
I would suggest we take 1 through 4 and then take 5 separately.
Item number 2, to approve the award contract Bridge 3-18 sump pump replacement to the low responsive bidder, Sable Mechanical LLC, in the amount of $17,750. Item number 3, to deny the award of contract elevator modernization Green Bay City Hall to the low responsive bidder, Franco Zizi Construction Company Incorporated, in the amount of $991,961. And item number 4, to approve to award contract traffic signal repair 2018 to the low responsive bidder, Vinton Construction Company, in the amount of $633,599.50.
We have provided summaries of the bids for these 4 contracts in your packet. Staff has, we've already awarded these, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so with the authorization that had been given at the staff level, we're simply reporting out that we have awarded to the low responsive contractor for Bridge 2-18, Bridge 3-18, and traffic signal repair 2018. In consultation with Parks Department, who oversees City Hall maintenance, we bid out the elevator modernization. This thing came in grossly over budget, so the recommendation was not to award. So we're simply reporting those actions out to you. Then for item number 5, raising buildings for Webster Avenue Reconstruction Group 1. That contract was out on the street. We had a bid opening scheduled for Tuesday of this week, the 24th. And normally, instead of listing it the way that we would have brought that contract to you for review and approval. There is a timeliness aspect to that. This is the first group of, I believe, 10 houses.
First 24.
It's the first group of 10. First group of 9 houses out of 24 that need to be demoed on the east side of Webster Avenue as part of the Webster project. We want to have those houses down by the end of October, mid-November at the latest, because some of the houses are in conflict with where we're putting our utilities. So it's critical to get the house down so we can put the sewers in. We got a call on Monday from one of the contractors who noticed there was an error in the completion time for the contract. It said that all work had to be completed by the end of October 2019, not 2018. So we had to quickly issue an addendum and extend the bid date until next Tuesday. So we could get the right completion date in there, otherwise the contractor would have had over a year to get the work done, and that's not gonna work for anybody. As a result of that, we're faced with some issues in getting that contract approved, because we needed council to take action next week to approve that contract. So with item 5, I think we have a couple of options, some more palatable than others.
Well, why don't we do this, Steve? Can we maybe take action then on
The first one?
those first 4?
Absolutely.
And then we can take our separate action
Yes,
discussion on 5?
well, yes,
Yeah.
the first 4 would be to receive and place on file the
Okay,
report.
entertain a motion for that?
I'll make a motion to receive and place on
Second.
file items 1 through 4.
Second.
Motion by Alder Steuer, second by Alder Burnett. Any discussion? All those in
One,
favor? Yes?
actually, one quick question. On the elevator, does that go out to bid again?
What we're going to do is to rescope it and see, we'll visit to find out why we had the issues with the bid.
Gotcha.
Potentially rescope the contract, and yes, to rebid
Okay,
it.
makes sense.
Okay. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 7A5, to approve to award contract raising buildings for Webster Avenue reconstruction, group number 1 to the low responsive bidder. Director Grenier.
So with the issues that were with the completion date in the contract, I think we have a couple of options available. One option that's always out there would be to list it as a, well, I can't even get it onto committee of the whole because we're not gonna know we're not gonna receive bids until next Tuesday. So if it's the desire of the committee and the common council, we're comfortable if you want to give us the authority to award that one at a staff level as well. I mean, we've been doing it all summer, and the process is open, it's transparent. Alternatively, I think, depending on when the next INS meeting would be, if the council wanted to grant the authority to the INS committee to award it, that would only put us 1 week behind.
What's your preference?
Again, we're very comfortable with giving the staff the directive to award to the low responsive bidder. I think we've demonstrated that over the past couple of years that we've been doing this. So it's really your pleasure.
And the council would still be required to take action next week, correct?
No, the council would take action on your giving us the authority.
Understood.
Well, I'd be comfortable with the committee, but I'm not on the committee all the time.
I have no preference.
I mean, is there anything, I mean, you say that we've been doing this
Correct.
anyway. Is there anything about this contract that would be substantially different than others that we've given that leash to staff?
The only reason that it's different is because we're no longer in summer session. We were only given that authority during the
Okay.
summer.
All right. So I would entertain a motion that we give that authority to staff to grant that contract.
I'll second.
Moved by Alder Burnett, second by Alder Steuer. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Yeah.
Aye.
Okay. Well, I just had one question on the raising. Steve, I don't know if you can
Yeah.
answer this. With these buildings that are coming down, has there been talk of just taking them down and any recycling at all, or is it just gonna be, you know what I'm saying? I'm looking at it from a standpoint of if there are repurposing efforts, would that be too much or not?
It gets very complicated. with the property owners as part of the acquisition process. If the property owners want various things from the house, that's part of the negotiation for acquisition. I believe we have received some outreach from community services that they also wanted to go through. So what we are trying to do is, after we get a contractor, we are gonna put the contractor in touch with Community Services Agency on 6th floor, so they can coordinate that. I have also received outreach from a number of the neighbors who, the house next door to me is coming down. Could I get the fence? The fence is on the property line between us. I would like to take the fence. We can't do anything, so same thing. We're taking that property owner's address and contact information down, and when we get a contractor, we will put the contractor and the property owner together, and whatever, that becomes a contract issue between them. But
Well, I
yeah,
think
we
it's
encourage
important to have
it.
that conversation, though.
Yes,
You know,
it's-
whether or not it happens, I still think it's important, and I
Yeah.
know that there's been more of a push to repurpose.
Absolutely.
Homes and some of the artifacts that are in them. So if there's a reasonable way of doing some of that, I would like to definitely see some
And
of that
again,
happen. Okay.
we're doing it. I don't know if there's a better way to do it.
I'm not sure either.
So,
Because it's a
if
big
somebody's got
it's a
some
big
suggestion,
project.
we're open.
And a lot of it's time sensitive and
Yep.
all that kind of stuff, but if there's ability to do that, I would really like to see that happen, so
As
I'll be in touch
A
with.
side note, Mark, a lot of the residents themselves have gone through the homes and saved windows, doors, trim. As part of the negotiation process, they had negotiated that with us before we purchased the home. You know, for example, there was historic trim in one, and the folks grabbed everything.
So they, okay, so there
They're
was some work
literally
done
down to the
already.
kitchen sink.
Well, that's good, in the past, it seemed like, just take it down, you know, I'm not saying all the time, but that seemed to be the mantra. And
Yep.
I like that thought process. All right, that's all, thank
All
you.
right, I'm going to reconduct that vote for clarity's sake. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Item 7B, granting of concrete sidewalk builder's license by Al Dix Concrete Incorporated. Staff?
Again, that's just a receipt and place on file. We're reporting out that we did grant
Did
that
we receive and
license.
place and file all four of those?
We did, yes.
Yes.
I thought we did.
Yep.
Motion
Well,
to
we didn't do
receive.
B. So,
Oh, we didn't do B.
motion by Alder Burnett,
Second place in file 7.
second by Alder Steuer. Any discussion? Those in favor say aye.
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 Motion carries.
You wanna start?
Item number E, Director's Report on Recent Activities of Public Works Department.
Okay, we'll try to keep this short for you. A couple of things. Obviously, as I alluded to earlier, we are working on the budget. I haven't heard any outreach from the mayor's office, but historically, or at least over the past several years, we've had a budget open house before the budget gets presented to the Joint Personnel and Finance Committee. I strongly suggest that you folks attend if you can. If you can't, and you're interested in sitting down to talk, by all means, contact my office. I'd love to sit down and talk to you about our budget.
When is that, Steve?
I
You
don't
don't
know.
know
I
yet?
haven't received any notification from the mayor's offices. Cleanup from the September 17th storm event. Based on the records that we've been able to look at and the published data from various sources, we're looking at anywhere from, depending on where you were in the city, the airport only got 3/4 of an inch, but areas on the east side that has experienced some of the heaviest flooding got 6 inches in less than 2 hours. That's over the 1,000-year storm event. So we had a very unusual event. Met with my staff immediately the following morning on Tuesday to have a conversation, and we made the decision. We knew there were folks who were going to be impacted by this, so we put the press release out and told folks, if you have flood damaged items, simply place them to the curb. They had to be out by Tuesday, and we are going to continue probably through the end of this week to catch up on that. And we're kind of trusting that folks were not going to take advantage. We know they are. There are some areas where folks just put stuff out. We know that. If it was obviously not flood damaged, it was just somebody who was taking advantage of bulk, we're picking it, but we're charging as well. So.
Do you let them know that at that time, or I mean, do you put it?
They'll be noticed if we identify that or think it's not flood
So,
related, and then
you know,
they're welcome to contest it.
We may have some folks contesting some of these. Some of them may say, oh, I tried to sneak one past and got caught. You know,
They won't admit.
But the intent was, we were trying to provide a service simply for those folks who were impacted by flooding. Fall loose leaf collection, we put out on social media today. Fall loose leaf collection will start October 15th. And at this point, we anticipate it running through the week of November 11th through 16th. This is something we deal with every year, and folks ask, why can't you go longer, and so on and so forth. Quite honestly, by Thanksgiving, I need to convert the fleet. Okay, we use the same trucks for picking leaves and fall loose leaf that I do for plowing snow. And if I don't have that stuff swapped out in time, and I don't know, top to bottom, it takes us between 2 and 3 weeks to equip the fleet to make the conversion. And I would rather, I guess if I'm gonna be chastised over something, I'd rather be chastised for leaving leaves out there than I would for not having the fleet ready to plow the city. So that's why we picked it. And actually, Chris and I were having a conversation earlier today. We did find another source of information based on when we expect peak leaves to come due and so on. I mean, so we're using a variety of different sources to help pick these dates. So we are trying to be conscious of not starting loose leaf collection when all the leaves are still on the trees. Last thing that I have for you is just a point of information that may be of interest. Today I was contacted by a second ship's agent. So the ship's agent is the folks who plan the itineraries for cruise ships. We have been working with McLean Kennedy, who's the ship's agent for Victory Cruise Lines, and I think I told you several months ago that Victory will be making ports of call in the city of Green Bay next year. I received outreach from another ship's agent who represents multiple cruise lines. They are also interested in making port of call to the city of Green Bay starting as early as next year. So we are going to continue work on, it's not going to take a lot of dollars, but there's going to be some elbow grease and some coordination between ourselves and the Parks Department. The north end of Lights Dock is where we anticipate these cruise ships docking, and we have told them that there are several things that may be of local interest to their passengers that we can help make available to them. I know there are a couple of the Victory cruises are anticipated to come in 11-ish in the morning, and they will depart 11-ish at night. And several of those are going to happen on Wednesdays. So we've told them, hey, you know, walking distance, the last thing you see before you get back on the boat is going to be the farmer's market on Broadway. It's right there. We strongly encourage you to tell your passengers that's right in their backyard, and they'll have the opportunity to frequent that event as they're going back to the ship. We're going to try to work with some of these cruise lines to see, do they have signature colors, and we'll use the bridges to welcome them to town and escort them back out. Thanks for coming to Green Bay, kind of thing. So, you know, we've got a real good rapport started with these folks, and we want to make sure we get off on the right foot. The gentleman I was talking to today offered up to me that Chicago really took for granted that these ships were coming, and they didn't treat them very well over the past couple of years, and as a result, Chicago's been dropped from their itinerary, and instead they're looking at jigsawing across the lake and hitting Green Bay, either Ludington, I think Ludington, Michigan, and then back across to Milwaukee, and then working their way back up Lake Michigan. They're going to skip Chicago altogether, and instead they want to come here. So very exciting news for us to, you know, it's a whole new demographic coming in with the cruise passengers. So I think it has some serious potential.
I assume Brad Tolden, the Convention and Visitors Bureau, is aware of the second new inquiry?
I don't know if they have reached out to Brad or not yet.
If I would just make that recommendation that you would refer that to Brad.
Absolutely. The ship's agent wants to make sure that there is docking space available. Then there's also usually a logistics company that plans shore excursions and itinerary for the port of call itself. So we tend to interface directly with the folks who, do you have a dock this long that can accommodate a vessel of this size? But yeah, I'd be more than happy to reach out to Brad to let him know I got an outreach.
Is that normally, like these cruise ships, is it within walking distance where these people go, or do they?
Actually,
like-
no, because.
They might want to go to Lambeau or do all
Well,
some other
last
things,
year
too.
I met
Mine
with
likes-
both the ship's
I
agent,
mean,
both the ship's agent and the logistics company. And the logistics company had a meeting scheduled with the CVB, and they were helping work with some of that stuff, and then we offered up, obviously, what we know in town. And that actually kind of played into where in Lights Park we wanted the dock, because we wanted to make sure they had enough room to get tour buses and, the ground transportation to accommodate their shore excursion. We wanted to make sure there was staging room for that and getting people on and off correctly.
Sounds cool, that's great.
Anything else?
That's it.
I entertain a motion to receive and place on file.
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion
Move
carries.
to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn by Alder Brunette,
Second?
second by Alder Steuer. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. We are adjourned.